Hello, welcome to SUSECON Digital. My name is Repositories. I'm a cloud solution architect with SUSE, and I have with me Neil McDonald.
Hello.
So today's session is a business track session. So we're going to talk mostly business-related items here. But what we'd like to introduce to you is one of the tools that we have at SUSE that we've been using very extensively for use by developers and by operators. But we would like to introduce to you a framework within those tools that you can utilize for your own business use cases. So without ado, let's get through the session. So here is a set of business cases that we have that we think is going to be relevant to you. And this is a non-exhaustive set of examples, but with the demos that will follow, you'll see how these can be achieved with the platform that we have provided to you. So I will go through some of these use cases, and Neil will follow up with how this can be surfaced through our tooling. So the first use case relates to you as a service provider, and you have a set of customers, typically end users or developers and operators. But you want them to have a tool set, preferably a UI, that they can use to be able to navigate very easily through a marketplace of applications and services. But we also want to be able to have very good control over who sees what. So you need some fine-grained entitlement, and you need some fine-grained capability to expose what the life cycle of those services are, who can do things with those services and who can't. The first use case, so that will relate to you as a customer or as a service provider, either way. Second use case is if you already have some services that you intend to deploy into a hybrid cloud environment. So you may have some services that you're running today in-house. You would like to bring those services out and deploy them on cloud service providers. And you need a unified UI to be able to present those services to everyone. So you don't want to use a cloud-specific UI to be able to present the services, because then the UI changes when you go from one cloud service provider to another. You might also want to have aggregated views of things across those cloud providers, but you don't want to expose that they are being serviced or they are going to be running in different clouds. So you want to minimize what is specific of those cloud providers. And then you want to customize that view for your own set of users. You want them to have this unified view. You want to have it potentially branded for your own company or for the customer itself. And you want to be able to maintain this over time without any changes that may happen at the end with the cloud service provider. So to be able to get an ecosystem of these type of services, we believe that the Stratos UI has today a nice framework to be able to do those integration, and certainly already has some capabilities to be able to link in services and applications that are running in multiple cloud environments. Next use case, as a customer, you would like to be able to update potentially some website that you've constructed before. Maybe you created your own portal. Maybe you had your own marketplace that you have developed and it's aging. Maybe it's using older technologies now. Or more so, you find that just exposing the services is not sufficient. Your customers are asking you that they want to see more detailed views of how those services are behaving, how they're being consumed, how much usage is going on with those services, and you're left with the task of having to develop this by yourself. Well, why not leverage an existing framework that today can do this for you with minimal amount of work on your side? So you can now take your existing resources that perhaps have developed your previous website, with minimal training, develop the integration points to have those surfaced within the SUSE cloud tooling. And then at that point, just maintain your own set of integrations instead of having to maintain a whole framework. And another use case that could be very appealing to you is that you have started on your journey to modernize your applications. Initially, when you started maybe with a small set of applications, just a dozen. And as you go through that journey, you discover that as you start taking advantage of cloud-native technologies, you start subdividing your applications or breaking them down into smaller microservices. Now you end up with a lot of these services. It gets very difficult to be able to present all those services to a set of customers. You don't know how to organize those services. You try to break them down of who can see what and how to maybe find some taxonomy on how to describe those services. And the alternative is to go and spend a lot of money with potentially API marketplaces, very complicated stuff that is very developer-centric. So you'd like to be able to use something that is much simpler, surface your services as many hundreds, thousands of them, organize them, make them be able to span across multiple clouds, and then be able to present those services to your set of customers. And they could be day one developers, but then this could move over to actually business level people that want to organize things and present them as a portfolio of applications. So now you can curate that set of services or applications, and over time, utilize the extensive amount of metric that we get from running your services onto different environments and monetize those services. So I'm going to switch over now to Neil, that is going to give you a overview of what the platform has been used for and how you can extend this platform towards the use cases that I just described. And what I would like at the end is to come back to you and say, if this looks interesting to you, is to get in touch with us so that we can then look at the next steps of how to enable you to use those. Neil, it's all yours.
Thank you, Louis. Perfect. So let me dive a bit more into detail around Stratos. And as I do this, I'm going to try and pick up on the business cases that Louis talked about there. I'm going to start with applications and services. You'll see that on one of the use cases. This is one of the key aspects of the SUSE Cloud Application Platform that we get through Cloud Foundry. And I'll talk about how that manifests itself in Stratos. But why is this important? As we look at enterprises, they want to increase the developer velocity and iterate on new applications quickly. This really is key, and you'll see enterprises trying to move from a sort of legacy world to a world where they can really deploy new applications very, very quickly. To do so, enterprise application developers need to leverage back-end services. If you take the example of something like a bank, where a bank will develop lots of different applications, those will need access to customer data, their transaction data, maybe data about promotions that bank has. So there'll be a number of services that provide that information that developers can connect their applications to get hold of that information. And so the questions you kind of ask are, how do developers know about the services that are available? How do they connect to them? So as we look at SUSE Cloud Application Platform, which is our Cloud Foundry distribution, that provides a platform as a service layer, and that's a key enabler to rapid application delivery. So it helps developers really focus on just building applications and deploying them and nothing else. There's a service marketplace that allows developers to discover and use services. It uses something called the Open Service Request Broker API, which is a standard for connecting applications to services. And those services can be deployed within either Cloud Foundry itself or within Kubernetes. And so sort of pictorially, it looks a bit like this. So you can see we have SUSE Cloud Application Platform, which is our Cloud Foundry distribution. And in there, the applications that developers build, and they iterate on those very quickly. They rely on back-end services that are more sort of long-running and maintained. And that can sit on Kubernetes. And additionally, there are containerized workloads that maybe your enterprise needs that are also running directly on Kubernetes. And we can also illustrate here that the services provided in Kubernetes can be made available to the applications running in Cloud Foundry. And so we kind of ask ourselves, well, how do I manage all of this? And this really is where Stratos comes in. Stratos really adds a rich web-based management interface above all of this. Some of the key features, particularly as we talk about the business use cases that Louis outlined, you can deploy and manage applications in Cloud Foundry. We have a services marketplace view where you can discover and manage services. We have functionality for Kubernetes where you can deploy and manage workloads in Kubernetes. One of the key aspects here, again, relating back to those business use cases, is that we've designed Stratos to be extensible, and we'll cover this in a bit more detail in a few slides' time. Also, as it's SUSE, it's open source. So everything that we talk about here in terms of Stratos is open source. There are two projects. There's an upstream project in the Cloud Foundry organization in GitHub. So Stratos is a core Cloud Foundry project. It was started by SUSE, and it's now graduated from being an incubated project to being a core project. And there was also a SUSE fork of that repository that has some additional extensions to provide some of the Kubernetes and Helm functionality. So both of those repositories are worth checking out. One of the key aspects that I wanted to outline here, again, playing back to some of the business use cases, is that at the heart of Stratos, we really designed it to be able to manage not just a single Cloud Foundry deployment or Kubernetes cluster, but to be able to manage multiple. And that could be a SUSE Cloud Application Platform installation, or it could be a Cloud Foundry distribution from another vendor, as illustrated here. And equally, we could be managing SUSE's container platform, or we could be managing a public cloud Kubernetes cluster, such as deployed in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. And Stratos really makes it easy to manage multiple clusters deployed across multiple cloud providers, as well as on-premise deployments through one single user interface. Okay, so this is quite a busy slide. This really, as I was talking about, extensibility. And I think, again, relating back to what Louis was saying, there's a real need to have a sort of single pane of glass UI where your users, whether they're developers or administrators or people that want to understand what's going on the platform from a kind of usage point of view, where they can go log in once and access their data and interact with the platform. And so what we've done in Stratos, as well as being able to manage things like Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes, we've made it easy to extend Stratos and add new functionality. So you can see here, Stratos has a front end which runs in your web browser and a back end which provides like an API server to that front end. Both of those pieces are extensible. There's also a core set of functionality. One of the core concepts that I kind of mentioned on the previous slide is the notion of endpoints. This is how we deal with multiple Kubernetes or Cloud Foundry deployments. So we have this notion of endpoint. It's a generic concept. And with that, we have the notion of authentication providers. So what we have effectively is the ability to add in new types of endpoint that have new types of authentication. So when we started with Cloud Foundry, it uses a particular type of authentication. When we added Kubernetes, it supports different types. So we're able to plug those in so that Stratos can now provide API access to Kubernetes in a consistent manner, regardless of which type of public cloud or on-premise Kubernetes you're talking to. And equally, it does the same for Cloud Foundry. We also have a Prometheus integration and integration for Helm. And what we want to do here is allow you to add your own endpoint types. So as you're developing your own applications or line of business tools, monitoring or whatever, that you can plug those into Stratos and expose through the back end their APIs, and then through the front end web-based views that allow users to manage those particular types of endpoint. And Stratos takes care of quite a lot of stuff around the edges and under the hood to make this easy to do, but it's a real enabler to integrating other tools very quickly. We also have the ability to theme Stratos, so you'll see that there's an upstream Cloud Foundry version that has a sort of Cloud Foundry look and feel, and then there's a downstream SUSE version that has more of a SUSE theme, and it has like a custom login screen. So there's certain extension points we've defined where you can override, if you like, the default behavior and really start to make it your own or your customer's own. Within Stratos, we obviously have a number of views for sort of Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes. And what we've started to do is to define certain extension points for those. So without going into detail, we make it very easy from a UI point of view to declare a sort of new component and say, I want this to appear as a new tab, or I want this to appear as a top-level navigation element, or I want this to appear as an action button. And you can do that, and you can then effectively extend the existing UI very, very easily. And this is how we've done some of the extensions like the Kubernetes and Helm work within Stratos. So sort of back to what Louis was saying at the start, if you need to integrate a particular management interface or a particular view that's not present for your needs, then there's a way of doing that in Stratos which allows you to cleanly do it on top of what's already been done. Obviously, you get all of the authentication on top that you use to log in. There's a permission scheme. So that's quite nice. One of the things we've done for something like the Kubernetes dashboard, which is a kind of a standard tool for interacting with Kubernetes, is we've integrated that in more of an embedded style. So we use an iframe, but we take care of all of the logging for you and the login and auth. So from a user's point of view, they don't have to worry about how do they install this thing, how do they log into it, how do they access it. It just appears within Stratos. They click on the button. It looks like it's seamlessly integrated. So this is us really trying to get to a single pane of glass UI while recognizing that there may well be existing UIs that you have that you don't want to rewrite from scratch. You want to integrate them into Stratos or at least into a single UI to make it very easy for your users. So where we're going, the stuff I have on the previous slide is stuff that we kind of have today. And as I said, that's something we at SUSE use to build our version of Stratos. Where we want to get to is this kind of extensions marketplace, or making it easier for people to kind of own and develop extensions on their own and share those with other people. So the way we're doing this, and this is something to look out for, is we're splitting Stratos up into a number of sort of packages. There'll be those that are shown here on the light blue that are very much the core packages that kind of make up the nuts and bolts of Stratos that you will need in all sort of distributions. Then there's things like you'll see the dark blue, which is everything related to Cloud Foundry. And a good example here actually is the Autoscaler extension, which was actually built by another company. Currently it's part of the Stratos code base, but it was built as an extension. They were kind of the first example of building an extension for Stratos. But that's what's kind of led us to make the next steps. So there's a bunch of functionality like that, which would make up the Cloud Foundry extensions. And then the ones in green here at the moment are the SUSE extensions, so for Kubernetes Helm, our custom theme. And those could be split out and made available more generically. So we want to make it possible for everyone to kind of build their own extensions and manage those. So something a bit more like this. So instead of all of the code living in one repository and managed and kind of owned by one development team, which is the case now, and which is what caused a bit of a problem with the Autoscaler extension, where we had to have that as part of the repository and manage that and work with that team. What we want to do is to make it possible to split everything out into separate repositories. So you'll see there'll be a number of things like the core and perhaps the Cloud Foundry that might live in the main Stratos repository. There may be some extensions provided by SUSE that live in our repository, and then one or more extensions of your own or other people's that would live in different repositories. That we have an extensions marketplace to make it very easy for people to find the extensions, to kind of register their extension, and then when somebody comes to kind of deliver a management UI for a particular customer, they can bring together the extensions they need, create their own customized version of Stratos that has just the things they need for their particular use cases. So this is coming, and we're working on it at the moment. So the last two slides very much talking about forward-looking functionality. What I'll do now, I'll switch, and I'm going to give you a demo. So I'm going to walk through Stratos. I'm not going to do a demo about the functionality. There are other SUSECON sessions for that. What I'm going to focus on in this demo is trying to talk about and touch on some of the functionality around extensions and endpoints, so you can see how and where you can extend Stratos. And then in summary, what we'd like you to do, as Louis says, hopefully through the business cases at the start and through the stuff I've talked about, we've maybe whetted your appetite. So we're looking for you to give Stratos a try, help us improve it, develop it forward, follow the development as we kind of build out the extensions capability. And hopefully when we get to the right point, you're able to then dive in and create your own extensions. So please check out our GitHub repositories, engage with us if you have any follow-up.
Well, thank you, Neil, and thank you for those that watched so far. And when you look at the demo that follows, you'll see a little bit of where we've done some extensions today, and you can extrapolate this into your own business case. That means if you would like to add other things to this UI.
Okay, so what you can see here is the login screen for SUSE Stratos Console. So let me go ahead and log in. What I've done here is I've taken the SUSE version and I've actually built it with some sample extensions that are in the Cloud Foundry Stratos GitHub repository, and we'll talk about those in a second. Let me go ahead and click on endpoints, and I just want to show you the endpoints view. So this is where users can add and connect to their endpoints, and so you'll see that I've connected two Cloud Foundries, or actually three Cloud Foundries, a metrics, a Kubernetes, and a couple of Helm repositories. The upstream version obviously has the Cloud Foundry functionality and the metrics, and the downstream SUSE version has the Kubernetes and Helm support. And one of the things you can do is add a new endpoint. And if you do so, you will get a new tile here that a user can use to register and connect to your endpoint. And you'll see if you were to build one of those extensions and add a new endpoint, that we allow you to add different authentication types depending on what your endpoint requires. You can see that we allow metrics to be added. So this is a Prometheus server. And here we're showing that the Prometheus server provides metrics for a couple of other endpoints that I've got wired into the system. And so if you needed to add metrics for a new endpoint type, you could do that too. So one of the things we talked about was the service marketplace. If I go on up to marketplace and click on that, what we're going to do now is go and fetch all of the available services from all of the connected Cloud Foundry endpoints that I have. If you remember, I had 3. So it'll take a while to fetch all of those. I can choose to filter down to a particular one. Let me look at this public CF. And what you can see here in the marketplace is a number of services that are available to developers. And some of these services you can see here have service plans. So if I click on a service to find its information, you can see some summary information about the service, and then we can get details of the service plans. Just take a second to load. So you can see, for example, that some of these service plans are available for free and some aren't, and some have billing information. So some organizations use those internally to cross-bill, I guess, departments for their use. Obviously, external services you may actually get billed for the use. So that's the concept of services that have service plans. This is something where you can easily add new services into the marketplace for your developers to use. When a developer wants to use a service, they would go into the application, or they would come into here, and they can create what's called an instance of the service that they can then use to connect to their application. You can just see I've got some example ones here, some sample services. As a developer, I could choose to connect to these, or I could choose to create my own. So that's the kind of service extensibility that we have here in the marketplace. With regard to applications, if I go in here, you can see all of my applications that I've got deployed in my system. These are the Cloud Foundry applications. If I go to workloads, I can see all of the Helm workloads that I've deployed to my Kubernetes. And again, Just some example ones. And again, as a user of the system, I can choose to deploy new workloads. So I can go to the Helm tab or side navigation, and much like the marketplace, I can browse the marketplace of Helm charts. So you can see this is using the stable repository. I could click on one like Airflow, find some information about that particular chart. The Helm charts here, they don't have service plan equivalents, so there's no kind of billing here, but it's a way of you as an organization being able to publish charts for others to consume and deploy easily. So I want to talk a bit about the extensibility that we mentioned during the sort of slide material. So I've touched on the endpoints view and the ability to add new endpoints and authentication types, and we've illustrated here the support for a number of different endpoint types. In terms of modifying the UI itself, you can see here I've got a very simple side nav item. It doesn't do much, but it does load another view. It registers itself in the side navigation. This is all done through Angular in this case. Very easy to just annotate an Angular component and it will appear in the right place. All the routing is taken care of for you automatically. That's one example extension point that makes it very easy to add something at the top level. If I go into applications, you'll see I've also added an action up here. So this is another extension point with a custom tooltip. Click on this, and again, I get an empty view. But this illustrates that much like being able to add into the side nav, I can also modify existing views. So this is an example of modifying an existing view to have an action. If I click into an application, you'll also see I have an example tab here. And again, if I click that, it's not going to do much. But again, it illustrates that I can add or extend the UI by adding tabs in certain places. So you can see that you can add in top-level items, you can add in tabs within existing views, and you can add in actions within existing views. One more pattern I just want to show quickly. So this is going into a Kubernetes endpoint. You see I just get a summary view here. I get some information to tell me that the Kubernetes dashboard has been installed. There's some configuration you can do of the dashboard if you wish. But what we've done here is make it very easy to view that dashboard from within Stratos. So if I click on View Dashboard, this will take a second or two. It's not a particularly quick system. And we've used just an iframe to embed the Kubernetes dashboard within the Stratos user interface. So this is the familiar Kubernetes dashboard. You can see we've done some little things like we're able to hide and show the top level nav just to tidy things up a little bit. They're not often used. And obviously you can hide and show. What happens is when you click on that button, we log you in to the Kubernetes dashboard automatically, and then we proxy the user interface through to the embedded iframe within Stratos. So you get a nice seamless experience, and it's really easy for the end user to use the dashboard without having to install it themselves, configure things, and then access it through a different URL. So this is a pattern that, as a Stratos extension developer, you might want to use to add new functionality into Stratos where you've got an existing UI that you want to make it easy for a user to interact with. Other customization places that we have, just things, for example, if I go to the About page, you'll see some About information here. This top panel is customizable. The end user license is customizable. You don't have to have one. If you do, we'll display that. And the support info block is customizable. This just shows an example Acme one from the code base, the examples. Just trying to give you a flavor that there are various extension points within Stratos that you can use when delivering this to an end user. Obviously, you can change the theming, you can change these about page information, EULA, that kind of stuff. So that's all I wanted to show. Just wanted to give you a flavor for some of the extensibility that we had inside of Stratos, as well a view of the marketplace and the Helm chart views that let you bring out services and Helm applications to your users.
So Neil demonstrated here all the stuff that was already created in blue and green in there are things that are part of the base product. And then what we'd like to engage with you is to build those extensions that make sense to your business and make it a valuable marketplace from which you can also eventually monetize your own services and manage much larger scale things across multi-cloud infrastructures.
Hey, thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you, and we hope to talk to you soon.